There's a lot of untapped potential out there. I think one of the things you've touched on is the awareness. So I think before you can even reach those populations, even in the mainstream population, I think that just building that awareness about this industry. A lot of people, it's all great to say reskilling, but I think translating what that means, if we can figure out a way to translate their experiences into those transferable skills that, could be used in this industry, that's one way to do it. But I do think we've got to start early, we've got to start young.
Welcome to Hands On Heroes podcast. I'm Val Crafton, the voice of grit. I champion the people who power progress and prove that the future is built by those willing to get their hands dirty. Let's dive in. Welcome to Hands On Heroes podcast. I have yet another fabulous guest, and it's a very special one to me. As part of the Infrastructure Mason, I'd like to introduce Hiba. Hiba, would you like to share with all the listeners who you are and give us a little insight to your background?
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation, actually. So my name is Hiba, and I have been working, I would say, mostly in the nonprofit sector for most of my career. I've really been attracted to mission-driven organizations and really wanting to make a difference in communities where I've worked. And so that's sort of how I landed in the nonprofit sector. I come from a research and policy background. I did my master's in international relations. I did my undergraduate degree actually in Middle Eastern studies with a focus on international relations. So like many people who talk about coming into this industry, was a windy road here. Yeah, I came from a research policy background. Data always very important for me in how we try to confront a lot of the structural issues confronting communities. In my last job, I worked for a small nonprofit, and I ended up doing some nonprofit management as well. And so strategy and execution, I know that they usually talk about that if you're on the strategy side, you're usually not executing. And if you're executing, you're not making the strategy. But I do straddle both of those worlds. And so I worked mostly in the policy and advocacy space for higher education. As you know, education in this country, or higher education in this country, can really be cost prohibitive for many people because it's so expensive. Tuition and fees, I think privates have reached $100,000 a year. And so it really is an access issue for many people. And one of the reasons I really like working for mission-driven organizations is because a lot of times, the issues that confront these communities really are structural issues. In higher education or in workforce development, it really isn't about inherent talent or drive. It really is about the structures that surround a lot of people. And so the good news is you can fix that. You can, work with taking down some of those structural barriers for people. And so I would say a lot of my experience, at least in my career, has been in trying to take down a lot of those structural barriers for people.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, I say it all the time, but it's very rarely the people is the problem. The root cause is usually the process within the strategy, right? Just trying to get to that, like you were saying, the workforce development. There's a strategy there, and there's a structure that has to get put into place. And the process has to get streamlined, and the dots have to get connected. So I love that you point on that, because I truly do believe it has less to do with the people and more to do with the strategy and processes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good thing because we can change.
That's right. That's something we have some control over. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what I did for the 3 years before I joined Infrastructure Masons. And then I'm relatively new to iMasons. I've been here. I just hit my 3-month mark. So I'm sure we'll get into my work here in a little bit. But yeah, if there's any other questions you have about my background, I also have a very international background. So I did my undergrad. I was born in Dubai. I grew up in Dubai, and then I did my undergrad in Cairo, Egypt, and then I did my master's in Montreal, Canada. And I also lived in Washington, D.C. a little bit. And then I moved to San Diego, where my career took a little bit of a break over there. I was doing herbalism and had my little online business. And then we moved back to the East Coast. I'm now in Philadelphia. So I also liked that iMasons had this global and international focus that attracted me as well. So yeah, we can get into sort of iMasons, I'm sure.
All of that. Well, that's what I was just thinking when you said about, your background and your path and your education and this winding road that you took that kind of landed you in the iMason position. It's really interesting because iMason is a global
Hmm.
mission, right?
Hmm.
And we really are all connected. If we want to be or not, we really are all connected. And I think it's so, so beautiful that iMason is really driving a mission that does connect people, not just
Exactly.
regionally, not just in a single market, even, but
Exactly.
the entire ecosystem and people on a global level. And it's very beautiful. Do you ever do this? Because I do this a lot. You think about all those little steps you've taken up to the point where you are, and you're like, you look back and you're like, all of these steps really have prepared me for this
Makes sense.
moment.
Yeah,
Like, had you
exactly.
known this is where you would end up and how you were able to utilize all of the things that you've done along the way. And I just think it's really beautiful and it's something that, folks who are maybe interested in transitioning into this world, there's a space for you, right?
Exactly.
The transferable skills really do matter. And I think it's just a really great time if someone's considering a pivot to do that transition. But I do want to jump into the iMason. Like, I
Hmm.
want to jump into maybe as part of, this role was brought to you. What were you thinking at the time? I know I probably touched on some of the things you probably thought, but I, I, I'm wondering what was that moment you were like, yeah, I want to do this. This is definitely the role for me. And then why did you say yes?
I'll start by maybe backtracking a little bit
Sure.
into, how I transitioned, and I touched on it a little bit with just, I think that where I was before was very much about giving students and people access to a higher education because our society up until this point, I think there is a transition now, but has placed such an emphasis on getting a degree, a 4-year degree or a 2-year associate's degree, and that you can only get a job, kind of following a certain path. And I do think that one of the things I started realizing is that I think that is a very limiting way of thinking. I do think that there are many pathways into a career. I think what is really nice about this field and digital infrastructure industry is that there are, we have data centers, but we do have all those adjacent kind of roles around it, whether it's marketing or construction or trades and so I think that I love that it's this like holistic way of looking at the industry that we need all the people. I remember a conversation I was having with someone from Vertiv high up, and I was like, what are you looking for in the industry? And he was like, everything from janitor to engineers to management. And I think
All
that
important.
was,
It's all
yeah, all of
important.
the above. I thought that was really interesting. And so I do think you touched on it, the reskilling and the windy paths. I think that industries like the digital infrastructure industry are starting to realize that we do have a huge talent gap. And I think that in these industries that grow really fast, I do think a lot of innovation comes with it. So I even think innovation in the ways of hiring or looking at the talent pool or looking to reskill veterans or looking at underrepresented communities like women or minorities. I think that it becomes very exciting because you have to think outside the box to get that talent. And so I think when I was looking at iMasons, and for those who maybe don't know, iMasons is a global nonprofit professional association. So we do bring together as Val alluded to, people from the industry, from different roles, different regions, because we are global, and different companies. I think that we play a neutral role in the industry, which I think can be really exciting because we can take out the competition from the equation and really come together or try to come together to solve some of the issues confronting. And so I think that all of that was exciting for me to be like, this is an industry that's looking beyond just a degree. And this is an industry where there's so much growth. So I think the potential is huge. I do like to take on a challenge. I guess I didn't realize how much of a challenge it was going to be trying to solve, especially this part of the pillar, because we do have three pillars. We have the people pillar, we have the innovation pillar, and we have the efficiency pillar. The people pillar sits under it, the education and workforce development initiatives, which I am the director of, and I'm trying to kind of solve for those issues in particular in the industry. So I thought it was really an exciting opportunity when it was presented to me. I guess I didn't quite know how big of a challenge I was walking into, which maybe was a good thing because I accepted the role and now I'm running with it. So
Yes.
that's sort of how I got here, that
Yes.
transition. So yeah.
It's interesting you that that perspective comes from someone who has gone and done their education from around the world, but I also think it's from all of those past experiences, being able to really see the different cultures and the different country and how the different countries sort of handle education.
Mhm.
Similarly, I think that the labor crisis is, within high tech and construction is a crisis across the
Mhm.
board. It's not just a US problem, it's a global problem.
Yeah,
And everybody is looking for that workforce. And I think construction is a big one because we can't we have to have someone who will go build it. But then once we've built all of these mission critical facilities, someone's got to flip the switch. And we've been so secretive about what
right.
a data center is for so
Exactly,
long.
which I think is part of the problem,
Yeah.
to be honest.
It
Yeah,
100% is part of the problem.
yeah,
It's now we're starting to see that resonate in our politics, and we're seeing people push back, and they just don't
right.
know what they don't know,
Exactly,
and not realizing how important the data center is as an overall utility for
exactly.
major companies, and it's just where we are today.
It
Um,
is where we are. And
it's
it's interesting because I there are other industries that I think are facing a similar issue. I was at an NREL convening in Washington, D.C., so National Research Energy Labs, and it was about the nuclear energy workforce. And they have many of the same issues, a perception problem, workforce problem, growing industry problem, or good thing, but also problem because you have to be able to sustain it. And it was just really interesting. But again, it's another place where I was coming from the data center side, and you could see, they were looking at us a bit as competition because we're looking for the same kind of talent, right? But it was more, my questions for them was more around like, how do we collaborate? Because we're in this together. And part of the reason your industry is growing so fast is because our industry is going so
it's
fast. But I think that you're right. It's that elusiveness also with the nuclear energy sector that didn't serve them. So it's interesting to think about how we can flip that switch.
And the nuclear conversation alone, they have to do their community education because that sounds scary if you don't
Exactly.
understand what that is. And the only thing you've ever, maybe heard of or connect back to from a nuclear perspective is maybe what you've heard on the news and
Exactly.
things that's happened in, Asia and so forth. And that sounds really scary to have one in my neighborhood.
Exactly. The
We've
NIMBY
got to educate. We've got to come
yeah,
together and do that because the reason why we're bringing it there is because we need the power. We're also going to bring data centers there as well. So it's a holistic conversation that we can all
Mhm.
arms and say, hey, let us help educate. Let us help show you how we can improve your communities
Yeah,
or you tell us how we can help, and
Exactly.
we can do that partnership as well. But it's a partnership in the end of the day, and it's probably the number one word I have heard this year more than anything else is
Partnership.
side of labor crisis is partnership.
Yeah. And community engagement.
And community engagement. Yeah, 100%. Those three, those are definitely the three big
And
top.
I agree. I think that, for me, a lot of the perception issue and that NIMBYism is exactly partnering across the board, partnering with each other as competitor, partnering with the communities, partnering with, local policies and
Yeah.
politics, politicians and I think just bringing good into the community, showing what good you can bring into the community. That's why I love the education and workforce development piece, because I think if you can show that, we're bringing in education initiatives into your community, or we're building a workforce in your community, that can offset a lot of that like bad perception. Yeah, I just think that it's true. It's really important.
And I think about, sometimes the root cause of how we even got here in the first place is back to that education, back to that conversation. We haven't been planting seeds early. We haven't been letting children know that there are alternatives to a path outside of college. I
Right.
mean, you said it already. I mean, it is very expensive to go to college. And I remember even coming out of college and how, when I was talking to some of the leaders on a construction project. 'Cause I'm from the construction sector part of this. The trades management all got paid the last 4 years to learn while I was paying someone else to learn. And I just really thought it was interesting. They're talking about how they're buying houses and I'm still paying
I
for college
know.
debt.
Well, I think it's funny at that NREL, there was a young gentleman who had just graduated, and we were talking about the perception that so far the perception of the trades has been kind of blue collar,
Yes.
and he was saying that that's changing amongst his generation. That, he was like, we all went and got these degrees, and he's like, it's also society pushes it. He was saying, like, last day of high school, everyone's wearing the sweatshirt with like the name of their school plastered across it. But he's like, our friend who went into the trades has like bought a home and he's making all this money. And we're like student debt, like loans, just like
Yeah.
struggling. And so
Yeah.
I think the perception is really changing when it comes to the trades now. And I think that's a great thing because, you know, again, it's not everyone needs to go to college. Not everyone needs a 4-year degree. It's a great thing to do, of course. I did it. But also, it's true that transitioning into the workforce, especially at that entry level, is so hard. But when you come out with a trade, you're ready to work right away and
Yeah.
you're snatched up. So I do
Yeah.
think that's changing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I've interviewed a few people on the podcast talking about how they had started off in the trades and then later went to school because they realized, hey, I want to go and get, a management, but there's
Mhm.
internships. Like a lot of the companies you work for will pay for you to go to school. So you can start off, they'll pay you to learn the trade. Then they'll
Right.
actually fund your education to further you into maybe a management level role
Exactly.
and so on. And I just think that's just such a beautiful story and a path that you have options.
Hmm.
I want to jump into something you said earlier, though, that we've got to get innovative in
Right.
where we find the workforce. And I had mentioned at our iMason meeting here in Arizona
Hmm.
that, I had some ideas around where we can find these folks. And one
Hmm.
of them was the foster care system. I'd read a statistic where 50% of foster care children age out of the system and become homeless. I mean, and when I think about that, I'm thinking, so I've got a 50-50 chance that I become homeless if I'm in this foster care system.
Hmm.
Just
That's
breaks
a
my
crazy
it
statistic.
breaks my heart
Yeah.
to think that these young, very capable children, not only do they get a hard time start in their career, like they don't have a leg up, they don't have parents to
Right.
fall back on when they have a hard
Right.
time, right? hey, can I come stay at home for a few months while I figure out I just lost my roommate or whatever happens as in a young kid's life. And I think about where they could go next. And I was like, wow, what a great opportunity to connect with them and plant the seeds and start reaching out because that's a funnel. That's a easy connection. And we have all the tools to show them there's a path. And oh, by the way, well, we've got internships and we pay you to learn and you've got a path there. And then I think about the women I've been interviewing at like tech schools
Mm-hmm.
and you meet some of at the tech school, they have multiple types of things. So you can become a hairstylist or you can become a mechanic or you can become, you go into electrical engineering or you can go into construction management or you can become a welder. I mean, they have tons of little tech programs. You can learn how to run a SOC or a knock and IT security. You can
Right.
work in semiconductor manufacturing. I mean, it is endless, but they're all next to each other. And I love that they're in the same space because I met a few of the students and how they said, hey, I came in here thinking my outlet was going to become a hairstylist. But then I saw this program and I'm like, here's another artistic outlet. And oh, by the way, the paycheck's 3 times as much. So I think I'm going to switch. And they
Exactly.
go into a trade or some other high tech role. And I just think it's beautiful. I mean, it's awesome. But we've got to plant the seeds and water that
That's
before
it.
high
That's
school
it.
and junior college.
Exactly.
I think about the women in maybe even battered women shelters where they've fallen on their luck. They likely are a single mom, right, with no co-parent support. And how can we maybe fund them and support them? Because college and going to college, doing a job, taking care of, like none of the system lines up to allow them to be supported. So
Exactly.
how can we give them an internship and get paid to learn? So their job is to learn and they get paid. And maybe we give them some funding to help with the childcare while they do that. And then take them from that codependency to independent.
Empowerment.
Empowerment. Yes. Yes.
I think you're, alluding to something really interesting because exactly, I think a lot of times we view these populations you're talking about as kind of a burden on the system and a drag on the system in some ways. And it's like, how do you exactly flip that script to say, how can we give them opportunities to be empowered and to contribute to the system?
Yes.
Again, it's not, I think a lot of times we think that they're inherently just not no good, nothing will come of them. And I think that's where, for me, there are structural issues. And if you can remove those structural barriers, a
Yes.
lot of times they actually, living under foster care system, being homeless, having had to go through that, you probably have a lot of resilience and a lot of skills that the industry could use, right? And so, again, I think it's getting away necessarily from this one track path that we've been kind of drilled into us that you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, that there are other ways and that there's a lot of untapped potential out there. I think one of the things you've touched on is the awareness. So I think before you can even reach those populations, even in the mainstream population, I think that just building that awareness about this industry, and a lot of people, it's all great to say reskilling, but I think translating what that means, if we can figure out a way to translate their experiences into those transferable skills that, could be used in this industry, that's one way to do it. But I do think we've got to start early, we've got to start young,
Yes.
into, bringing that awareness to them. And yeah, I would say unemployed population, could we work with like the unemployment office or social security or, to also tap into people who may be
100%.
looking for jobs actively. Right now, a ton of federal workers have been laid off as well. Like there's, I think, just lots of untapped potential out there. Uh,
100%.
I think what is unclear is the pathway. How do you go from there to here? And I think if you can mentor or exactly support people in that pathway, I think that we could really be, because we're talking today 300,000 shortage. We're talking by 2030, 1 million to 1.5 million people shortage. The industry cannot sustain itself without the talent. And so I do think, again, thinking outside the box for how we can solve for this and look at some of the more underrepresented communities could be really to our benefit.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I try to think about too is here we have a problem or a gap, but I don't want to just put a band-aid on this problem. I want to understand where it started.
Exactly.
And I don't want to start halfway through the pipeline. I want to start at the beginning when they're
Exactly.
dreaming about what they want to be when they grow up. And
Mhm.
then also, like with Hands on Heroes, because that's my mission is really to plant the seeds for tomorrow. I not only do want to do that, but I want to educate the parents
Yeah.
because one, am I educating them about the possibility of how they can guide their child to another direction because they just got excited about maybe the trades.
Mhm.
But two, maybe that parent is thinking about a transitional skill or
Mhm.
change in career or market, and I've just planted a seed in their mind for themselves for
Well,
today.
yeah. Yeah.
And so I try to say, how many different avenues can I touch? And so I think back to your point is how can we also support a need in the industry, with community outreach,
Mhm.
education, and
Mhm.
these statistics where children end up homeless. Let's see if we can lower that down by creating, again, I'm going to use the word partnership
Yeah.
with the folks who are caring for them. And it takes pretty big hearts to do that, but sometimes they just need those partners to help educate them on how to guide those children. They
Yeah.
just don't know what they don't know. This episode is powered by Mod 42, the modular data center company redefining speed to market. From design to delivery, Mod 42 brings precision manufacturing, quality assurance, and trusted execution to every build. When reliability can't wait, Mod 42 delivers. Learn more at mod42.com. I think that's beautiful. And I think it's a really great segue to kind of transition into your role with iMason, which is over the people. Maybe I'll let you explain it because, like you said, there's multiple pillars, and then under that pillar, there's multiple segments. So explain to the listeners what your role is, why it was put into place, and what is the mission for that role.
So, yeah, so I'm the director of the People Pillar, as you mentioned, which is the Education and Workforce Development Initiatives. I will say that I came on to iMasons and took over this pillar with a bit of a blank canvas. It's not that there was nothing here before, but what was here wasn't quite working, and we can get into a little bit of that as well in terms of, some of the successes and challenges. Part of when I came on, and Santiago, my boss, was really great in being like, I want you to figure out what you want to do with this role and how, you can solve for your mission, which is really to close this talent gap. So my mission is to, think about how we can close or reduce the gap in the talent that the industry is facing. So, one of the first things I did, especially this is, I guess, from my background as well, is a lot of stakeholder engagement. So, the partnering, but I just wanted to hear from other people who are in the communities, on the ground, or already doing the work of what's out there already, what's working, what's not working, what's your involvement been with iMasons, and how do you see my role? Like, what would you like to see me do? And what would you like to see? Because I think I first came on and thought that I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to create programming. I'm going to create initiatives. We're going to get, curriculum into high schools. We're going to bring that awareness and I think one of the things you have to be careful of is that it is a really big challenge. And so, not trying to boil the ocean or bite off more than you can chew, because at the end of the day, you do want to do, I think, one or two things and then scale those really well. And we can talk about, some of the past initiatives that Masons and some of the issues that were there. And so initially I was like, we're going to be doing all this work. And slowly what I started to realize is that actually it's not that there's nothing out there in terms of education initiatives. There's a ton out there. There's every data center company, every Google, every Amazon, every Equinix and EdgeConneX and do have initiatives. There are online academies in data center. There's a community college program out of Nova. There's one where you live, Val, in Phoenix.
Yep.
And we can talk a little bit about that because I think what Brian Darby and Brian Javek and Kirk Bush have done is really great. There's the UC Berkeley Global Digital Infrastructure Curriculum. And so I started realizing, wait a minute, there are so many initiatives out there, actually. And it's not about creating just another initiative, although that would be great. It's one way to do it. I'm now more interested in how do I bring all of this together? How do we stop working in silos? How do we stop looking at each other as competition? And I think one of the assets I have is that iMasons already does bring all the competitors together into some kind of forum or space, and we're a neutral body. So I think that we and I am really well placed to say, can we leave the competition at the door for real? And can we come together? Because the way I see it, we can create economies of scale. I mean, we can pool our resources, we can standardize maybe a little bit so that Ohio doesn't have a different curriculum than Phoenix, that doesn't have a different curriculum than Nova in their community colleges, that UC Berkeley has its curriculum. Is there a way to, first of all, document what all these initiatives are? One of the things that I've heard is that it would be great to have like a central repository or database where we know what's out there in terms of resources, not just for us, but also for students and veterans and, people who do want to come into the industry. Can they come and find a resources page to be like, oh, there's a paid free training, online training I can take. There's this, maybe there's a scholarship out there for me to take this curriculum. And so I think I'm seeing more and more my role as kind of the one to try and bring all the stakeholders together to, I think, recognize that we have to solve this together because it's something that's facing us all and we're going to have to solve for it. So I don't think it's about one person doing this or one company coming up with the best initiative. I really do think it's about finding solutions. I've in my short 3 months, I've been to a few conferences and I think everyone recognizes the problem. We can sit here and talk for 20 minutes about the gaps and the issues and the challenges. And I'm kind of more interested in the solutions and what can we do that's concrete, tangible, but also sustainable and scalable, because I think that's one, maybe I would say, lesson learned from some of the initiatives we did have at iMasons, and we can talk about that a little bit, is that you need to think through what you're doing in a way that you can scale and make sure it's sustainable from the very beginning, because it's very hard to fix something once you're already, and I think it's very tempting to run into something and hurry. And I know the industry moves very fast. It's one thing I've noticed. Everyone's like, quick, and what's your strategy? And what's the solution? And everyone wants the answer. But I do think that having a well thought through strategy is what's going to make it a long-term success. So that's sort of my charge. And so I've put together the people committee. You're on it now, which I'm really excited about.
Very excited about
And partnership is really important to me in everything I do, and so is collaboration. And so I do with the committee, I'm envisioning kind of co-creating this strategy together. I don't want to be the one, and then we have local chapters. I see a lot of opportunity here at iMasons and the way it's run to drive a lot of these initiatives through the local chapters. Because at the end of the day, again, it's not going to be me sitting at the top at headquarters coming in to say, this is what your community needs. I really do think you need that community piece. And so I think working in partnership with the local chapters is going to be key for me for them to then go and, develop that programming or those initiatives in their community. I was on a call with folks from Phoenix, Brian Darby, Brian Jabek, and Kirk last week. And, I was like, why don't we just take this community college curriculum and scale it? And they were like, kind of, maybe my naivete is good because I can dream big and I don't know the challenges, but they were like, it took 10 months to implement it. You need the infrastructure, you need the right people. It really took a lot of work. It took fundraising. So it's not just, oh, this is a great curriculum. Let's go implement it in all these
Right.
places. It really is about having that community engagement,
Right.
like a lot. So,
I think you make a great point, though. I don't think it's too much. I don't think you're dreaming too big. I think it's very realistic to say, why can't we scale this from a
yeah,
repeatability perspective?
right.
Maybe what it is rather than someone recreating the wheel, you've already done all these steps. You've already learned the hard lessons. I mean, this is
Mhm.
what we do in construction when we go from one project to the next. We understand what were our lessons learned and how can we ensure that that doesn't
Mhm.
happen again. Then we have to get innovative. And so we've already learned the hard lessons. We understand what best in class looks like now.
Mhm.
Let's document that and create sort of this standard operating procedure. Not that it can evolve and get better, but it's a
Exactly.
today's best in class. So that way there's a actual manual that someone can take and then go scale it someplace else. Say, here's the things we
Exactly.
had to do. Here's where the costs for our area. These are the people we had to get involved. And it's a formula. It's
Exactly.
not you're sitting here trying to recreate a will because I think you said it best before. There's so much that already exists out there.
Right. Where I'm not going to duplicate, but that's exactly it, Valerie. I think that more and more I see my role as being that connector piece and being able to maybe work with the local chapters to exactly document best practices, standard operating procedures to say, okay, if there is that will at another chapter to do this work, here is how Phoenix did it. Here is like the lessons learned, the best practices. Here's what you absolutely need. Here is what you don't. And so I think playing that role is where I think I'm going to make the most impact.
Mhm.
Again, not to say that there aren't initiatives that I'd love to support. There's also scholarships. We're going to be thinking on the people committee about how to tie in scholarships into some of these initiatives as well. But again, I would love to tie them to our local chapters and this other resource we have that you're a part of called our member focus groups. Which encompass more kind of the demographic groups. So we have the women's group, which is doing great things. We have the armed forces group, which is also really doing amazing things and kind of reskilling, again, another population, veterans, to come into the community that I do think have, again, a lot of those transferable skills. We have Embrace,
Yes.
which is, minorities. And then we have the emerging talent and the Latinx. So far, the emerging talent has been quite quiet and a bit struggling. But I think, again, for me, wherever I see challenge and struggle, I see lots of opportunity. And I do think there's a huge interest now in this, like young professionals, emerging talent. And so strengthening also our member focus groups to also lessons learned. There's just a wealth of resources in there and information. And I know in the women's group, sisterhood. And so also creating, I think, the other piece of the puzzle, which is workforce development, kind of those mentorship opportunities, things like that, internship opportunities, that's going to be equally as important. So, yeah.
I 100%. I mean, I think you mentioned it how we have a group of people here, for example, from Arizona who built this beautiful thing, and we can duplicate that. We can create some repeatability around that. And here's the reality. It's not like the folks who are involved are only building here in Arizona. They
Exactly.
have, offices and they're building across
Yeah.
the nation or even across the world. And so you almost automatically have a partnership in place because they're already involved.
Yes.
So if they're already involved and they're already in your next community, it would very easily be able to duplicate that and say, hey, let's continue this partnership forward. And now you have a mentor from this local district to call within your own
Hmm.
house.
Hmm.
This could be example like Brian Darby. You can
Exactly.
call him, and that's your mentor for the person who's launching it someplace else. And to me, it just like naturally kind of flows in my head on how easily this could kind of scale and roll out. So I'm very excited to be a part of that, and collaborate with so many people who have their hands in this from different
Hmm.
angles.
Hmm.
Not like too many hands in, but really just bringing a different perspective, and it's just it just really creating quite a beautiful recipe. I think that
Exactly.
is exactly what you need. I'm so excited to be a
I
part of it.
think it's the right time. I
Yeah,
think people are eager for it. I do think people are willing to say, we're going to leave that competitive thing behind and forget working in silos that's come together. Um, I think it is a necessary ingredient. I don't think, when I see every day a new initiative, every time I speak to someone, I was on a call with the Equinix Foundation. They have tons of initiatives and people they're supporting. Um, I'm trying to figure out how do I bring all these pieces and everyone together because I think the industry operates in silos, and even at iMasons, we have all these chapters that kind of operate in silos. We have the member focus groups that sort of operate in silos. And so for me, it's like, how do I
build
thread
the
that?
bridge.
Yeah,
Build the
exactly.
bridge between the silos. That's
Exactly.
what you're gonna do.
Exactly.
I love that. I love that. So we've talked about where you've been. We
Hmm.
talked about where you are. Let's
Hmm.
talk about where you're going. So
Okay.
we've touched on it a little bit.
Yes.
You've got this big vision, and it's about being the connector. It's the dot
Right.
connector between the people and the education, the needs in the industry, leaving the labels and
Hmm.
companies and business at the door, and coming together to address this crisis head on.
Hmm.
Love that. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see or what you're putting together moving into 2026. I get to be a part of it. I'm on a front row seat, but I want the listeners to hear it from you.
So actually, let me talk about what didn't work.
Yeah,
Because
let's
I
start
think,
there. That's what I was
yeah,
thinking. I didn't
I
want to
think that gonna give you a foundation
yeah,
for why I'm
why we're
moving.
going where we're going. Yeah.
So, and it's not that it didn't work, because it did work. It's just that I think there were lessons learned, like we said. And so we, under the education initiative, had a couple of things that we were doing. One was a capstone program, which I think is great. I've been part of a capstone myself. I've mentored students through it, um, and a scholarship program. And the capstone program, if for those who don't know, it's a senior project at an institution, usually a 4 year. We've worked with 4 years, so maybe at community colleges too, but typically at 4 year. And students go into teams and they're paired with mentors from the industry. And the mentors usually have a problem they're trying to solve. And so they give that problem to those students. So
Okay.
it's a lovely way of connecting students with industry, with real world issues that face the industry, and with a mentor. And so throughout the year, students work with that mentor to solve for that problem. They get exposed to the industry. They can, hands on experience, all of that. And I would say that in the first couple of cohorts, it worked really well. And even out of those cohorts, I know that some people were hired. I've just done an interview with one of them who went to work for EdgeConneX because Philip Marangella was her mentor, and he hired her before she even finished,
Oh,
before she
amazing.
even graduated. So, and
That's
she's still there 5 years later. And the nice thing about the capstone and mentorship in general is that usually when students are mentored, they want to pay it forward. And so she was like, I had such a great experience that I will be a mentor if you need one for someone else, which I think is just such a beautiful closed loop. In theory, wonderful. But what was tough about the capstone is that scaling a program like that is really hard. So now when you start to, go to more and more colleges and you want to scale, you need more and more mentors. And I don't know your experience, but in my experience, usually the people who are really engaged and passionate are the same like 10, 20 people. Like it's hard to scale something like that
We've
because
all seen the little comic of the people who want to have, who want to complain about the problem. The line is really long, but the people who want to do something about the
exactly.
problem, there's only one person in line. You've seen the comic.
Exactly. It's kind of like that, where, put your money where your mouth is,
That's right. That's right.
So finding more and more mentors year after year, you're not going to have the Philip Marangella's mentoring year after year or the Bill Claymans. And so I think it just got really hard to scale. It wasn't really that sustainable. We weren't tracking the students and we weren't collecting KPIs. So, in terms of reporting back, because we are a member-based association, we didn't really have the figures to report back on how many capstones, where did they go? Did they actually go into the industry? Did this make an impact? And so I think that it suffered a little bit from not being able to like raise money for the scholarships because the students were paired with scholarships as well that we gave them. And I think the scholarship program suffered from a little bit of the same. We weren't really tracking the students who got those scholarships. We weren't really reporting back on what, whether they went into the industry, the impact it was making. So it got just increasingly difficult to raise money for that because we weren't showing the impact. And so it's not that they were inherently bad. I think, though, that there was a lack of a bit of long-term thinking into the design. And so for me, anything I do, I think really has to be thought through, that it has to be paired with KPIs. What is it we want to achieve? What is the goal? And I think that these initiatives were a bit disconnected from an overall strategy and story. And I think what people love is a story, and they want to be able to trace, what it is you're doing and why.
The number one way to get someone involved is if you're going to have an you need to create that emotional sort of
Emotional
response.
pull, like,
Yeah, that emotional
and I
response.
think there
Yeah.
was a huge opportunity there. I just think it was maybe missed, or maybe it just scaled so quick, that
That's
they
possible too.
didn't have time to like gather that, and
Yeah.
maybe mechanism wasn't in place to communicate that. And so I think for me, when I was looking at the talent gap and the issue at hand, I think I was looking at it as a pipeline. And I think you have to. And I think that's the story. I think that we have to look at middle school, high school, and I call that bucket building awareness.
Yes.
And then there's the higher education. I throw in there, community college 4 year. I throw in there trades as well. But I think, you know, curriculum at these colleges, one of the very interesting things I heard at the NREL event was creating envelopes around of credentials around some of these other degrees. So let's say it's an electrical engineering degree. Can you go in and just put like a course or a credential around that, wrap it around that, so that you're not necessarily creating a whole new degree or anything, but can we just put like a module or something in digital infrastructure around that, which I thought was a really interesting concept. There's also the concept of stackable credentials, which I think is really interesting. So being able to, take different courses and stack them, stack your credentials to then have that and a sufficient number of credits to graduate or get your degree or finish your trade. So that's the second piece, which I call building talent. And then the third piece for me is really the workforce development piece. I will say that I think this is going to be the most challenging in some ways once these students graduate. And great, they're aware of the industry. They've gone in and maybe taken a credential or a community college program or a trade intending to get in. How do they get into the industry? I think I've heard so much. We have all these jobs, we have all these jobs. And I've been approached by people saying, I've been trying to get into the industry and like, how do I do it? Like, so I think building pathways is the last piece for me. So those would include mentorships, internships, networking opportunities, maybe an ambassador program, or funneling them into the emerging talent, MFG. I think that we need to be able to guide all the students that are coming out of these programs and into the industry. And I think that piece isn't there. And I don't think people are thinking about it as much as, yes, people may be going to career fairs, things like that, but I think we need kind of a larger, more accessible strategy than just career fairs. But that's a piece of it too. So again, I think there's many angles. So I'm trying to come at it from all the different angles, but also looking at that pipeline. So now students, again, have the awareness, gone in to get a credential degree, done an online academy course, and now they can find a mentor in the space, an internship in the space. We also have our job matching platform. I don't know if you know anything about that, but it is a skills-based hiring platform, which we haven't done a great job at advertising, but I think that's one thing I want to be able to put out there and blast as well. So it's free for students and professionals and veterans. It was built with veterans in mind, so it knows how to translate. And this is maybe an interesting idea where you were talking about like foster kids or women in shelters. It translates their experience, their military experience into skills, but it does this for students and professionals as well. So you can put in what you've studied, the level of education you have. For the military, you'd put in what you were in the military, and it will automatically translate into like the skills, and then it will match you with jobs. And for us, it pulls in all of our partners jobs in automatically. Partners don't have to do anything. It just
Right.
scrapes their website and pulls all their jobs.
For listeners who just ears just perked up and you're listening to this, you're like, hold on, I've been trying to get in this industry, and I do hear that a lot. Is
Yeah,
I have tried to get in this industry. I've got a finance background. I would love to get in this industry. We definitely need finance people.
exactly. We keep
Then they
hearing
go
you
and
need
look at
people.
those
How
jobs, and the
Yeah,
jobs descriptions don't quite align to what they've done, but they have all
exactly.
the transferable skills to meet it. How do I adjust my resume to reflect that matching lingo, right? There's a language we all speak in mission critical that's a little different
Exactly.
in every other industry, and every industry has their own version. But how do I connect them? So just quickly, let's tell if you're listening and that's something that you're sitting here trying going, hey, I'm listening to this because I wanted to learn more about this industry. Where do they find that job matching platform?
It's on our website.
Mhm.
And if you go to initiatives and then under the people, you'll see it. It says job matching platform. I do want to say that we are revamping the people pillar um, kind of pages on our website to sort of tell more of the story, more of our strategy, and put our resources on there. So I'd say check back early 2026 as well to
Look forward
see what
to.
else we have on the website because I think we will have more resources available there too. And but yeah, so you'll find that on our website. It's free. Go in, put in your credentials and everything, and register, and then it will translate for you and it will match you and play around with it. You can do it by region, by role, and you can see what jobs in the industry are available to you. So I'd say that's one really great tool that, again, we haven't been great about advertising, but it is there.
Yeah,
Uh,
wonderful.
yeah, use it. It's free.
So we've talked about sort of what didn't work. Even talked about a little bit of what did work, but we just need to really tweak it a little bit
Right.
so it's scalable. Because
Right.
sometimes when it's small, you just like when you start a little business and everyone knows what to do and it's a small little tribe, it works with your little tribe. But what I heard you say is when we started thinking about scaling it, it
Get
suddenly it all kind of starts to fall apart because,
right.
like you said, there's so many of the SMEs who are involved, and then you can only utilize them so much. They get stretched thin and so on. So I love that story. So now the foundation of what has been done, you've started talking a little bit about it. Take us into 26. We're going to see some more resources jump up on the people's page and that pillar
You're
get
going to see
revamped for
resources
sure.
jump up on the people page. I'm in the process of building out, again, on the people's page, there is going to be intake forms. I'm trying to automate as much as possible. So there's going to be intake forms where if you're interested in becoming a mentor, if you're interested in becoming a speaker, going to a school or a college and speaking about your experience or the industry, you can indicate your interest on a form. If you're interested in hosting a data center day at your workplace or a day or a site tour, these are the things that I'm collecting because these are the emails I get from people. We want to host a data set, like we want someone to come speak to our students. We want to tour a facility. And so I started thinking, okay, I'm one person getting all these emails. How can I automate this so they're tagged in our HubSpot and I'm able to gather a list of people who are interested. So when the time comes that someone asks for a mentor, I compare them. So it will ask you about your areas of expertise, the age group you want to mentor, all of these questions. And so I'm trying to build that pool of mentors, of speakers, guest lecturers, even some of our members have expressed interest in maybe having a guest lecture. So, going to talk to students. So that's 2026. And also, the job matching platform also does internships, but potentially also an intake form on the student side where if they would like an internship, then I can go out to our membership because the other asset we have is all the members. We have over 6,000 members. And so I think for me to be able to go out and say, anyone would like to mentor, anyone have an internship, I think that is a useful resource for our members and for the students. So again, it's a bit the connector piece, but in a different way.
Yeah.
So
Like
that's
matchmaking.
2026,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
just trying to build up our reserves of volunteers with that being like, you have first dibs to hire, these students or the person you're mentoring or bring
Yeah.
them into the industry. I think that that's again the workforce pipeline. And then in 2026, also rethinking our scholarships. So again, I'd love to be able to tie the scholarships to KPIs. So it's not concrete yet, but also tying it to our local chapters and member focus groups to be able to say we have scholarships available, putting out RFPs basically. So it will be like leadership development RFP, and you can apply for those scholarships, that kind of thing. But more to come, definitely end of the year 2026. Come to our website, you'll see a lot more of those intake forms and information about scholarships and all of that. So, yeah, 2026 is going to be,
A big year.
yeah.
I mean, I've watched a lot happen this last year, but I am so excited about next year because I feel like last year was about planting seeds, and the next year is going to be spring is coming. And we're going to
Yep,
see the blossoms of all the seeds we've been talking about and
I
plant
love that.
partnerships. And yeah,
I was an herbalist, so for me, that
I
metaphor.
just read right into your. I love that. So, and we're going to have, if you're listening in and you go to the show notes, we're going to have links to the iMason website, and to that people page, and to Hiba if you want to reach out to her. She just shared with you a dozen ways to get involved through internships, being a mentor, scholarship, job matching. There's so much opportunity. And if you're looking for a really great place to kind of funnel excellent talent into, into your internship programs within, here's a place where they want to help you match and bridge that. I think
Yep.
it's so beautiful. And that you're going to automate some of this to make it, streamline some all of this. That I think it's awesome. Does the job matching platform also, if someone puts in a criteria and they're saying, hey, I've got these transferable skills, this was a question that popped in my mind, so I just figured I'd ask you. Does
Mhm.
it also, you said something about matching to interns and matching to mentors and matching to scholarships, but is there also a job matching? Hey, we've got this match here, and does it pull up any jobs
So
that,
the job matching platform matches internships and jobs. So the
okay,
mentorships and speakers, that's separate. I would love to build it into the platform. And I've actually asked the tech people, and it is possible to add in like apprenticeships and mentors. But for now, it's just jobs and internships. We'll collect kind of that intake on our website on a separate form. But yes, it'll show them all the jobs that are open to them that they match with and the internships
I love
once
that.
they put in all their experience and everything. So definitely check it out and play with it.
Is it only internship jobs or is it jobs as well?
Jobs.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's phenomenal.
So for the iMasons one, you'll see all our partner jobs. So anyone who's a partner with iMasons, you'll see all their jobs.
Okay. Wow, that's really
Like a
beautiful.
member benefit because they get kind of dibs on the
On the
candidate.
first, oh,
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. I
Yeah.
love that. And so if you're listening and you're not a member of iMasons, she just kind of dropped a really nice little golden nugget for you that you get first dibs on some really solid transferable skills for your needs, which really actually eliminates some legwork on your part trying to figure that out. Because a lot of times, if people don't match the job description, they won't apply for it. So just getting the people to apply is sometimes half the battle.
Exactly.
And so rather than trying to steal from someone else, there's someone here that can hit the ground running with very little, training, outside some, company specifics, which anybody would have that learning curve, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. That's super exciting. So
Yeah, poaching shouldn't be the first strategy.
this should not be our first strategy
Just
at
inflate
all.
wages. That's all.
We're just, yeah, we're definitely not moving the needle by doing that. As we move into sort of coming up to the end, what is some of your final thoughts for everybody when it comes to wanting to get involved? What are some of your biggest needs right now?
I think I would say if you're interested in collaborating, first of all, if you're interested in what we're doing on the education and workforce development front, I'd say join a people committee meeting. We'll also be releasing a calendar of events, a really comprehensive one. Marketing team is doing that. I think on there you'll be able to see when the people committee meetings are. You can always contact me. You'll put my contacts and the links. So if you want to get involved in these, in this exciting initiatives, I would say contact me, join a people committee meeting. If I can have a good diverse representation of people, whether on the committee, it doesn't have to be the committee, maybe it's a consortium or some kind of body where we can come together and align our incentives. It would be great to have sort of educators there, but also industry people and maybe even policymakers just to align our incentives and move. I think we all want the same thing. We'd all love to increase the workforce, educate people. So yeah, I'd say that that's another piece. Get involved. Let's collaborate. Let's find solutions. I'm open to if you are doing something in the space already and need my support, that's also what I'm open to do is supporting what's out there, working together, partnership, community engagement, the whole gamut, really. But yeah, and then if you want to be involved, you can either become a member of iMasons individually, and I know women's group has some discount codes if
We
it's
do.
cost prohibitive for some people. Maybe you can put that in the links. Um,
Mhm.
and then joining member focus groups, joining a local chapter. I think there's just so many ways to get involved. Obviously, I would love to have people who are interested to myself, but the need is great out there. And so, yeah, that's what I would say. Just get involved. I know a lot of it is dependent. I know you're a volunteer. We're really dependent a lot on volunteers, but it's great because so many people want to give back. So many people want to see sort of the fruits of those seeds they've planted, just getting involved and being a force for good, I guess, if you're
Yeah.
wanting to mentor or speak or host something at your workplace. I know you do a lot of that, Valerie, so maybe you're a better
I have
person
lots of
to talk
tips.
about it.
Lots of tips.
But
uh,
yeah, being involved in the women's group or coming to our website to see, I think, you'll see some our requests for proposals out there, possibly for some scholarships or scholarship opportunities as well. So check back. I think there's a lot of exciting things going to be happening. I'll also be at PTC in Hawaii. So if you want to connect, again, contact me. Happy to discuss more.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey, all the great things that you're doing, and everything we have to look forward to. I can't agree more. There are a ton of people who want to get involved.
Yes.
I don't know that they all know how
Yes.
necessarily. And even, no matter what level of time you have, there's something for you. And it is going to take all of us, right? So even if you can only give an hour to a month, there's an opportunity for you to get involved. If you can give a little bit more, there's an opportunity for you to get involved. There's an endless amount of opportunities
Yeah.
and not enough people. So back to, his point is there's just join, get online, come to a meeting and see where you can fit in. We're
Exactly.
leaving our labels at the door and we're coming together as one. And
Exactly.
so,
And if you can't give time, you can always
yep,
donate. We have
that's
a
right.
501(c)(3) arm as well, the Digital Infrastructure Futures Foundation. And, donations go to scholarships. So that will also be, you'll be able to also designate where you want that money to go. If you want it to go to the women's group or a local chapter or your community, you'll be able to do that as well. I'm trying to work with IT to for, people to be able to say, I'd like this to be designated to something specific. If you don't care and just want it to go to kind of general scholarship bucket or operational expenses, that works too. So yeah, if you don't have the time but have some dollars to spare, that's always welcome as well.
Yes, I mean, obviously the scholarships is a huge need, just kind of removing those barriers from folks being
Exactly.
able to enter in and do this. Not everybody starts at the same place in the race for life, right? So however we can support some young youth to get ahead, that would be great. So thank you so much for coming on and
Thank you
sharing
so
your
much.
journey and
This was fun.
everything. This was super fun, and I'm so glad to have you on here and really kind of promote and get excited about what's coming and how folks can get involved, how they can partner, how they can give back, whether you have time or not, monetary. I know some companies do, funding matches and what have you. So if this is one of those things where you want to donate and your company will then match it, that goes a long way. And so thank you again. And then I do need to give a shout out to the title sponsor, Mod 42 Modular Data Centers for I can't promote and keep this mic hot without them. So thank you to them. And thank you to iMasons and to Hiba for all the good work you're doing. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you for watching this episode of Hands On Heroes. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to get notified every Thursday that a new video has been posted. And while we're here, check out another episode. Also, if you're interested in joining the mission, either as a guest speaker or sponsor, visit handsonheroes.net for more information or reach out to us directly at info@handsonheroes.net.